I want to welcome everybody to this week's Internet Marketing Series from Zimrock Marketing. This week we'll be tackling Pinterest. I'm sure you've all heard about it. It's kind of the social rage and rave these days, but people mostly wonder, what is it, and is it valid for business, and can it be something that I use to generate more interest or more potentially prospects or customers for my business? And that's what we're going to try to tackle here today. We'll go into some details on that, and then just talk about some startup and how to get going in Pinterest as we go forward. Just as a promo to this series, this is number 3 in a series of 8 internet marketing webinars. The first one was on the Facebook timeline change for business, the business pages that happened automatically back at the end of March. And then the second one was about mobile marketing, kind of all things mobile marketing, just a good high-level overview of what options are out there and how it can be used for your business. And if you go to zimrock.com, and I'll type that basically in the chat box here. If you go there and then go to the About Us top menu bar, and then there's a webinars link under there. The replays and the recordings for those past 2 are out there, as will this one be when I have finished it. We'll get it recorded or processed, and I'll put that out there. And then also the future registrations for the future webinars will be out there as well. I usually typically put those out the next day after, so tomorrow I'll put next week's out there. And I believe next week what we're going to tackle is social networking or just social marketing. Now, it's kind of a tired subject. I know social media is like, boy, you've been kind of bludgeoned with it, and sort of what we're talking about today. But I'm going to take it from a little bit of a fresher angle, saying, it's not just, for kids anymore. There are some things that are valid, and I'm going to go basically kind of the 7 best practices of social media that businesses are using to be successful. So I encourage you to please register for that, and it should be up, like I said, sometime tomorrow or the next day or so, and we'll send out we'll post these also in things like the Chamber of Commerce areas on the events pages, and of course my website under this Zimrock About Us tab, webinars, will always have that, so feel free to go into that as well. So with having said all of that, let's get started. So basically the idea here about Pinterest is, is this viable? Everybody knows that it's out there. People think that it's just a, hey, it's a place to post, funny pictures or recipes or things like that. And how can that possibly be good for, for a business? And the answer is, like anything else, it is not a silver bullet for, say, like SEO or web traffic or those sorts of things, as are really no social media. They are they give you back what you give into them. So Pinterest is interesting because of the dramatic growth that it's seeing. Let's jump to this one, and you can see, basically from a standpoint of, what is it and why is it interesting to us? Pinterest, the name is pretty simple. It's a combination of 2 words, pin and interest. And it's basically, a pin to them is an image. So if you pin something, you're pinning an image. And if it's something that you're pinning, we assume that you're interested in it, and other people may be as well. So when they repin, for instance, they're interested in what you're interested in as well, and therefore the tie becomes there. So, quite simply, that's just basically where this thing came from. And each pinned area is called a board. So they have pin boards for all these different subjects and topics that you can follow. And so that's where all the images or the pins go, in these separate boards. You can have your own boards, you can follow other boards, and we'll get to all that stuff at the end, but or as we go along, and we'll take you through what that means. So as we mentioned, it's pinning things, images, and interests. So it is a social network based on interests. So it's everybody that's sharing interests that they have. Again, about anything. It can be, from a business perspective, it can be products, services, but again, it's got to be an image that's interesting or compelling. What I kind of use from a content perspective is always like the 3 E's, and I do this for written content as well, and make everything either educational, entertaining, or enlightening. therefore, people are interested and might repin it or may click on it, share it, those kinds of things, like it, and or go to your website because there may be a link image or a URL link to your website for that, and that's where the traffic piece comes in. So what is Pinterest and how can you use it? Obviously, this is where you can follow people and they can follow you. You can interact with this also with Facebook and Twitter, so it becomes a intertwined situation, and you can turn those on and off, and I'll show you how to do that later as we get into this as well. But the nice thing here is the ability to not follow everything that if you follow somebody, like follow a person, you don't have to follow everything that they do. Um, as I put here, it's you don't need to get. Let's say someone you followed, like it was a cousin, and they have some kids, but they also have some things they follow about travel. You want to follow their travel site, but you don't want to follow all their kids' site. You don't have to follow that. Of course, that's probably a something that you would do, but the reality is you can pick and choose very carefully. When you follow somebody, you don't have to follow all their boards. You can, again, selectively choose which ones you want to choose. Um, so obviously the situation here is only the things that you're interested in, and you only want to share things that you're interested in with others. So basically, why are people so excited about about Pinterest in general? Let's go ahead and basically explore that. And as I mentioned earlier, the rapid rise of this. Here's probably the biggest reason that people are getting most excited is the amount of people that have jumped on Pinterest in a short period of time is growing faster than Facebook did, than Twitter, Google Plus, all those. It's eclipsing those in the amount of time it's reached certain levels. It's the fastest to reach 10 million users ever, and it's growing exponentially. So anytime you have that kind of audience or that kind of reach, it's something that you have to pay attention to. And what's the best way from a business perspective, again, to engage where it's meaningful, where your time is well spent, and then maybe you get something out of it. But it is, as I mentioned, always something with social. It's kind of you get what you give. So always remember that as you do this. It's not something you can just jump in yourself. So kind of what what Pinterest is about. I mean, Shareaholic is a very big sharing site. They have all kinds of tools and buttons that people put on their websites to share with all the different social sites out there. But Pinterest is driving more traffic to company websites and blogs than YouTube, Google Plus, and LinkedIn combined, which is pretty staggering when you think of YouTube as probably the number two largest search engine out there. Google Plus is growing at an amazing rate, and of course LinkedIn, we all know what that is. So when you combine the amount of traffic that Pinterest is driving to actual websites and eclipsing some of these people together, again, it's a reason we're talking about this today, and it's why you want to step up and potentially get involved in this. Um, this is obviously the kind of the addiction side of Pinterest. You've heard people say, "Oh, I love Pinterest. I'm addicted to it," and that sort of thing. And there's certain levels that that people can engage at. But there's people that literally pin almost everything they see. There's people that repin all kinds of things. So they're constantly doing these sort of things, and you can do that too. But from a business perspective, what I typically say is only engage in what you are truly doing as a business or what you're interested in as a business that may be related to your business. If you want to get, I would say, legitimate returns coming back to your websites and that sort of thing. It's one thing just to get a bunch of eyeballs, and that's fine from like a branding perspective, but it's not going to help grow your business or maybe create more prospects or potential customers if it's not a somewhat of a targeted audience. So it's okay to do funny pictures and things like that, and I would say mix some of those in there because they do tend to go viral, and it is good to do that. But if you've got it where you start to do that around your conditioned audience, people that are sharing back with you or following your boards or things like that, that they're interested in, they'll be much more inclined to probably engage with you at the website level or the business level if they are interested or following because it's a related field to what their interests are. So like I said, the addiction piece is interesting, but it really is kind of a word of caution, I would say, out there before you go get too active or go too crazy with pinning and repinning and that sort of thing. Again, this is just kind of more social proof of why this is something that we've got to pay attention to. And this is just this, this year, early this year. Facebook obviously is still the big boy on the block, but Pinterest is now number 2 behind them in amount of time spent per month on a social website. And you can look at the other ones. I mean, obviously Twitter and LinkedIn, and I mean these are the big ones out there, and it's substantially more than most of those. So again, more reasons to kind of step up and pay attention, to what they're doing. Okay, so now that I've basically kind of done a little bit of the backdrop, maybe let's talk about, how this is different from other social networks, and then we'll jump into, how it's good for and how to jump into or how to use it for business. Saw this quote. It's a pretty interesting quote. Copyblogger is a real big social blogging site, has all kinds of information on it. And what Beth Hayden said basically is what's great about Pinterest is that it's image based. So therefore it's very visual. And as we all know, we as a society have become very visual. We like pictures and videos and things like that much more than we like text. Typically because it's faster. We have a very short attention span typically to websites. We want to kind of get in, see something that's compelling, and either take action or move on or do something like that. She also made a nice little quote against Facebook saying it's like to think of Pinterest as Facebook without the whining. And Facebook is just such a enormous social site. Anytime they make a change, and Facebook does quite often, it always seems to generate a lot of passion, negatively and positively, about what they do. And it's a lot more, I guess. There's a lot people are venting more in that area, and what she's referring to here is that it's very visual, it's very social, but it's kind of more positive. There's not a lot of negativity or anything going on the site. It's just truly about sharing interests, and that sort of thing. So um, it may be one of the reasons why it is expanding like it is. So let's jump into a few things that people are doing with it, from a business perspective. And these are just some examples, and I won't go into go through all of these, but if you could think of it from a business perspective, if you're helping somebody with your products or services, and you want to tell them how to do it yourself, put DIY kind of stuff out there. You can put coupons and special offers. Do it carefully. Don't overwhelm it. What I always say is do good pins in a 3-to-1, 5-to-1, 7-to-1 kind of ratio before you do marketing things specifically, and therefore it won't be dominating, and people may not just get turned off by pure marketing and pure marketing sense, where you actually are sharing value and sharing interest with people as you do that. But product releases are great. If you got something new that's of interest because it's newsworthy, it's almost like press or press release situations, and that's a good thing. But the rest of this stuff is always good to talk about. Anything that's related to your industry. Um, and if you create separate boards that are not just product and service related, create them to something that people might be interested in, and that is, helping people with, holiday wish lists. If your animals and kids are always a great draw and things like that. So you can add multiple boards where someone follows you or your company, they can see other things that you're doing, but you can kind of mix it in with the marketing and promotional pieces at the same time. So this was just meant to be a couple of ideas. So what kind of businesses are a good fit for Pinterest? Let's just jump into that. What I will say too, is most people, when they think about social media, um, some have an immediate negative reaction, saying, "Well, I don't have time to do that," or "I don't think social works for me," or "It'll never work for my industry," or that sort of thing. And in some cases, you might be right. Like for instance, if someone's running like an accounting business, maybe Pinterest or some other socials may not be the best fit. But then again, it's entirely possible that it could be, you could be kind of a trailblazer and use Pinterest to market your business, and have great success with it. The point is that you don't really know until you jump in and try something, what will work or what won't. Um, the encouraging point I would say to this kind of thing is it is so new and it is breaking such ground so fast. If you tried to mix in some interesting related fields or create multiple boards around your business, um, with tips, techniques, hints, things like that that truly are helpful, all of a sudden you might be building some authority. And if things do get taken on in kind of a viral mode, you do get a broader reach. And now you can send that traffic back to your website, as all the information like descriptions and web URLs and domain names do travel with the pin itself, the image. So um, I wouldn't discount anything by just thinking I don't fit this kind of thing. Give it a try. But if you do give something a try, be consistent with it for a period of time. Don't just jump on, try a blast, and then if nothing happens, say, oh, it didn't work. Engage. Engage with the social world of it. Make sure you obviously have time to be consistent. And that's not saying you have to do a lot, but whatever you do, do it more on a consistent basis. If you pin a couple pictures per week versus per day, that's fine. Then just do a couple per week every week for a couple, for a month or two, and just see how that, generates any kind of following or liking in what you're doing. So um, always something to think about. So talking about some of the businesses, I mean, there's obvious ones that just jump out at you, and here's a list of those, because everything in here has typically we're from a visual perspective, they can be opulent. Obviously, restaurants and foods, can be very appealing from a visual perspective. Clothing, fashion, spa, beauty, animals, travel, home decor. There's all kinds of things that just make sense when it comes to, to types of businesses. But as I mentioned, don't discount anything, because you can actually include some of these types of images in your separate boards as you kind of promote your businesses, your products and services as well. So when it comes down to it, how can we use Pinterest? How do we, what do we actually do, and how do we jump in? I'll show you some examples of what's, kind of what's going on out there. For instance, if you want to sell some specific things, you can create boards about the products you sell. I mean, Whole Foods, who would have thought they'd have a big, Pinterest presence? They got 22 different boards. They got a lot of different pins. Pins, again, being images. But they've separated into things like, who wants dinner? Eat your veggies, or, sweet tooth. So they've separated desserts and vegetables, and, it says, how does your garden grow? So they've given tips maybe on how to do organic growing or farming, or do your own, DIY stuff there in growing your own vegetables. So they've gotten creative around, engaging an audience in something that we all have passion for, which of course is food. So a great way to do to promote our products, even and promote the products you sell, is do something along these lines. Um, Another one might be, things that we like, or gift ideas, or sale items. Nordstrom's, classic example here. They've got almost like a miniature catalog, because they can actually post stuff out here, and they've got different boards for shoes, gifts, seasonal things, dresses, whatever that is. They can promote specific things, but treat it as, again, create a board that says, things we love, or gift ideas. Those kind of things are going to go viral, and these pictures then, or the pins, will travel with anybody who pins or repins this information. Uh, so again, it can truly be a way to sell and promote items, but where it's kind of under the guise of interest, because in this case it's fashion or something that people want to share or look at. As I mentioned earlier about, tips, techniques, things like that, and that's probably what's going to be most utilized for businesses. Anytime you can do anything that has, like I said, insider tips, or top trends, those are the kind of things that people are going to pay attention to and want to view, want to follow, and want to share. There's, some different levels of, there's pinning and repinning, there's comments, and there's liking in Pinterest, and all those things add value, because when people use those and utilize those social aspects, it shares with all their followers. It's similar to the Facebook liking and things like that, but in this case, all the information you have travels with these pins and these images. So it can be quite explosive in the growth that's possible with Pinterest and images and things that you're doing. So think of it always as, the more you give, again, the more you get. It's adding value. Anytime you can add value to your audience, your community that might be interested in the things you're interested in, the better chance you have, obviously, of engaging with them on a more consistent basis. And again, their groups, and then their groups, and so on. You can see the viral aspect of that every day. Another one might be hold contests. I mean, what they've done, like here, it says, pin it to win it. If you want to have people, anybody who pins this is available to win X, whatever that is. You're having the iPad 3 giveaway. So people pin, your pictures over and over, and all of a sudden people start repinning, and you are going to give away an iPad to some random pinner that, repinned or pinned your image. But the beauty is as they're doing this, obviously, again, your description, your URL, your website is traveling all around with these, and then potentially, if they're interested, they'll click and they generate traffic back to your website, and that's the ultimate goal. So promotion, all different kinds of ways, from products, services that are maybe in an appealing sort of way, to tips, techniques, to trends, all that sort of stuff, to contests. There's a lot of different ways to be creative around what you do and how you attack this. Next, it says add a pin to your blog or website to allow easy sharing. And what these basically, and I'll show you where to get these, the code for this or something else in a minute. But you basically want people to be able to pin things very easily, and how it looks, and we can demonstrate that a little bit later as well. But if someone is on a website and sees something, that there's an image maybe in a blog post or something like that, if they hit the pin, it pops up and says, like if there's multiple images, which image do you want to pin? And because they can then click that image, they can automatically pin that to their board. And again, the information that goes along with that image will travel with it. So in your title, description, alt tags, things like that you set up in the picture or image itself when you've done that. So giving the people to easily share your information is just as important as what you pin on your site, but allowing them to pin off of your website as well. So it's two different areas that they can attack. Or you can attack to have people pin and bring again more interest and potentially more traffic back to your website. So here's another quote that I thought was very compelling, again, from a business perspective for Pinterest, which, again, most people don't view it that way. But Jason Falls from entrepreneur.com basically said the most powerful business application is you can post images of your products or services to any of your boards, link them back to your website, and it's like having a virtual store catalog. So especially if you have something that you sell product or service wise that does have a visual appeal, or in something that is visually appealing to people, I mean, it's a tremendous way to reach a whole lot of people, especially if you have a national type approach. But this goes for local as well, because as we put things into a local perspective, when people sign up, they put their profiles, they do add things like where they are and things like that. So when you start to follow people, you can actually do searches by specific location or city, so you can begin to follow people or look at their pins that are in your area. So you're almost like choosing your clientele in a sense. So it's not just national, but it can be from a local perspective as well. So it's a great way to look at that. So where do you start? If you want to do this, how do you get started with Pinterest? So let's jump into a few of these things. First things first, well, let me see if I can I'm going to go ahead and maybe try to bring up a desktop and then share, and I can actually go out to Pinterest itself. Hopefully you might be seeing my screen right now. Okay, I've jumped on to actually my Pinterest account right here. So when you go, if you're up here and you're in your settings over on the top right here, you'll see things down here that you can add, like your website, like your location, a little bit of information about your company and that sort of thing. And all this stuff will travel with your pins. Right now I have these turned off, but you can interface with Facebook, Twitter, and you can obviously hide it from search engines, which I wouldn't obviously recommend. You certainly want search engines to find your pins or your posts. But if you do this, every time you make pins or posts or have any activity, it will also post things to your wall or to your Twitter account. You just have to authorize them. So it has a really nice integration piece where you don't have to go out to each one of these separate social sites and add things to it. You can do it yourself in one spot, pin it, and then just tell it to do that, and it'll take care of it for you. So one of the first things I would say, and as we just talked about that here, is make sure you got your website and your profile. You can add pictures, of course. Interest, the About section, and connect to Facebook and Twitter, as I just mentioned. So those are things that you can do that obviously will engage and interact with your users in a bigger way. Another thing is add a bookmarklet so you can pin things yourself that you like and that you come across constantly. So I'll jump back over here and show you what I mean by that. If I was on, let's just say I'm going to bring up, I'll bring up my homepage, which is like USA Today or something like that. You notice here, right up here in my toolbar, it says pin it. That means if I'm on any page anywhere on the internet, if I click pin it, basically it brings up all the photos that are on that page, and you can choose which one you want to pin. So it's pretty. They make it really easy to do once you're logged in to Pinterest. You go ahead and add different pins to what you're doing. And you're wondering, well, how did that pin it actually get there? When you're on Pinterest, you can go to, let me go back over here. On the About Us here, it says Pin It button. You click on this, and it takes you to all different kinds of things that you can use. There's an iPhone app. The easiest way is if you're using a browser like Firefox or something like that, once you have this toolbar here, which is opened up, and you just do that by doing View, Toolbars, and then make sure your bookmarks toolbar is active, all you'd have to do is take this and just drag this up here, and it's already there, so I'm not going to do it. But that will drop that pin it right there on your browser. So you can go back and pin anything you want at any time, from any web page that you want. So let's jump back over to the presentation here. And then what I basically said, obviously, is pin, pin, pin. But do it consistently. Don't do it where it's totally one-sided, where you're just trying to promote. Do it through that you actually share interesting pins with your boards that you've chosen, and then obviously repin other people's and the people that you follow. And again, it's an engagement, and you can see sometimes or somehow that could become a little bit addicting because it's fun to see interesting photos and share them and that sort of thing. But from a business perspective, again, be judicial in your amount of pins and what you pin. Come up with compelling pinboard names. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, it doesn't have to be, products, services. I mean, choose something that's about that. Like one of the boards that I set up for myself is I just put cool technology. And what I do there is I share things that I think, to me, that I think are cool. And it doesn't always have to be about internet marketing or something that Zimrock Marketing does. It can be anything that I just think is neat. I'll maybe share another website that I came across, a really cool free tool or something like that, and I might grab one of their images and share that. That's because it's so neat that I want other people to be able to see what that application's about. So, and when people see that I maybe pinned something that they found helpful or useful later on, they're maybe more inclined to, click on something that I put out there that may take them back to Zimrock Marketing site or something like that. So, again, it's about being, again, it's not always about promotion, but it can be entertaining, enlightening, educational, things like that that will make people engage, with you. So, and then as always, when you're pinning, descriptions are key. Think of a description. Obviously, make it fit the image always, and that for the if the description fits. But it's okay if what you're pinning is something that's sort of about your business. It's okay to slip in, pseudo like a keyword or keyword phrase that is about your business. And especially if it's something like I said about your own site, use your business name in the description as well. It's okay to use your business name. That way, that will begin to become traveled around as things get pinned and repinned. and again help you with promotion, and that becomes more of a branding issue as well, as that becomes also searchable from a social signal perspective. The search engines look at social now as when people start to share or pin or Google Plus and all those different things, they're taking notice of that as that it's popular, so therefore it must be interesting and compelling to them. So um, let me move that off there real quick. And what I mentioned, always get social. Any social site is built on kind of the social aspects of this. So why not share and be social? And what you can do is this @ username. If you're following somebody or want to reference somebody else's pin name, mine might be Zimrock, or someone else's something else. But if someone was repinning something or pinning something for the first time they thought was interesting, or maybe something to me as a user, they can put @ username in their description, and then I will get that kind of potential viral love for what they're pinning, and then what might get repinned, and so on. Um, uh, Always mix original pinning with repinning. Repinning is repeating. If someone else pins something, it's kind of like retweeting on a Twitter account. If someone pins something and you like it and you repin it, it repins to obviously your followers, and your users get to see that as well on your boards when they're looking and seeing the new things. So it's great to do that. Don't just, like I said, don't just be one-sided. Don't be one way. Don't just pin your own stuff and promote your own things. Repin other people's. Be interested in what they're doing, and it'll come back, like I said, in twofold, because you'll now garner a community that you can sort of communicate with visually, that is, and potentially drive more traffic again to your website, which is our goal. Comments are basically, and/or likes are other people's pins, will also get them to be recognized it's almost like a vote. If you vote for this, you're voting and telling everybody else, hey, I voted for this. I think this is great. It doesn't mean that you have to repin it to your board or put that image on there, but when certain pins get a lot of likes or a lot of comments, they begin to go up in the popularity. So they'll show up on general screens as top pins or top repinned items or liked items. So it's important that if something is truly appealing and truly interesting that you think everybody else will like, engage. Go ahead and make a comment on it. Go ahead and like it and things like that. I think it's only going to be beneficial to you, as it is very reciprocal. Obviously, with any other social site, I would be remiss if I didn't say, what should you avoid? What are the pitfalls that could potentially be out there for Pinterest in general? Again, another interesting one from Jason. Always remember, in any social site, it is social media. So if you simply display images of your products without contributing, it's going to look that way. People will know it. You'll get unfollowed. People won't like you. They won't look at your boards. They won't do things like that, and you won't get the potential traffic that is potentially huge out there with the Pinterest users. His last line kind of says it all. Nobody likes a self-absorbed blowhard, of course. If all you do is sit and promote at me, and don't engage, don't share, don't look at anybody else's, don't follow anybody else's, you'll get out of it what you give into it. So, and like I said, I'll always promote that in any social media site. Social is one of those things that it can be very beneficial for your business, but it takes engagement. It does take a social aspect that you truly are sharing, and the old saying, "Givers gain." It's along that line to think about. So, and like I said, instead of doing it promotionally, do something like Whole Foods did, and share information, share what they have, share how to do something, share again, recipes or how to grow, or anything else. So. For instance, here's a guy, Samuel Gordon. He has a jewelry store in Oklahoma City. He does pin pictures of rings and watches and things because they do have a fashion appeal, but he also has different boards for images that make him laugh, or other things that he loves, and he follows other people's and repins other people's things that they love, and that's kind of the give and take of it, and that's where I think you're going to see the most benefit out of this. So bottom line is engage. Get out there and start pinning. It's something that I think the world as I mentioned, we become such a kind of a sort of an ADD society. We do want things to be fairly quick and concise. We don't want to spend a lot of time having to read and a lot of text and that sort of thing. We kind of want to bounce around and see things. And images, or in this case pins, are a perfect solution for that, because you can convey the picture's worth 1,000 words kind of idea. You can show things that make sense, that are related to your business, and they do have a description and websites tied to them, which is great. But it is something that people will like and share pretty readily if it is something that's very interesting to them. But again, it's the back and forth, or the engagement, I think, that that is most critical here. So I'm 40 minutes into this, so I'll go ahead and just kind of open it up to Q&A. There has been quite a few questions coming in. I will go ahead and try to address these. I will repeat, if you have any questions, certainly put them into the lower left, and I'll be glad to try to answer as much as I can. This is a great question. It's basically, it says, I already have too much to keep up with between Facebook and Twitter and now Google+. Do we really need another social network? Great question, and that's kind of the point of this whole webinar today is this something that makes sense for you? Should you take a look at Pinterest? The answer really lies within each person. A, do they have the time to engage effectively? And again, I'm not saying it takes a ton of time. Pop in a couple of times a week. It can really literally take a few minutes. Plan what you want to promote, but also, like I said, mix in some other things. So go out there and look at some other people's, follow a few people, like a few pictures, repin a couple, pin a few of your own out there, put your own information, that sort of thing. And just, a couple times a week you do that. It doesn't take much time. And if things are working effectively, you'll see things begin to kind of viral as you go forward. So it is pretty interesting. With a limited amount of activity, you can see a pretty decent return of traffic back to a website. And that's, from a business perspective, that is our goal, using pretty much any social media. But you'll also find it very interesting to be able to just announce and show people things, maybe with no intent of having them return for services or products, but actually just engage and, again, brand your business a little bit. It's top of mind idea where if someone starts to see your business or your business name or what you do, even if it's local, it does resonate and it will continue to go. So kind of, do you need another social site? I can't answer that specifically for you, but all I would say is Pinterest is becoming amazingly effective. It's growing at a crazy rate, and it's something that probably just shouldn't be ignored as you go forward. So, can I use Pinterest from the phone? Yeah, absolutely. As I showed before, when I went over to Pinterest, there is a iPhone app and an Android app for Pinterest. You can do it the same way on there, where you can pin anything you see on your web phone, and vice versa. You can upload and do things from there. So it's a really easy way to use Pinterest. A lot of people, if you happen to view or were on my webinar last week about mobile marketing, one of the things I talked about is just the astronomical growth of smartphones and how they're outpacing computers. In this case, they're outpacing like laptops 5 to 1, and people are actually using it for that. So it is actually a great question and a key point in this whole kind of Pinterest thing, that is, it does go mobile very easily, especially with tablets as well. How do we get more friends or followers on Pinterest? Basically, most of the things that I've been talking about is when you engage in kind of a two-way conversation with people socially, and conversation can mean, again, just images or pins, things can go viral. So what I tell people is, you don't really have to work at that. If you do it right, where you do truly engage and share, you're just going to get followers by default, because you're going to be posting things that are interesting to them, and it's something that they're going to want to follow or like or comment or repin. And when they start doing that, again, the viral nature of things, like it's that old commercial, I told two people, they told two people, and so on. It's that idea. And as things begin to explode like that, you'll get the followers, again, if you've engaged in an enjoyable manner with them. And I also mentioned before that you can turn on your connections to Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. So as you begin to pin, all that begins to be reported out there as well. So you've now hit another whole audience of your followers potentially, or people who have liked you in Facebook or that you have following you on Twitter. You're reaching a much broader audience every time you begin to engage with them. So so that's obviously a great one. And there's actually there's another tool you can use, and I'll type it down here in the box. And this is a free tool. It's called pinreach.com. See if I type that right. Yep. And what PinReach does basically is it allows you to kind of see who the biggest, who has the biggest stats. It's kind of a Pinterest stat watcher, and you can see who the big users are. And if you want to, sometimes it just makes sense to follow some of the biggest users, because if you were lucky enough to maybe get refollowed by them, or they hit on something you like, they got a massive audience. So you'd hope to kind of get lucky and use the viral nature of their audience. So again, I would encourage you to always, take a look at who the big players are, follow them, add their boards to your interests and that sort of thing, and when possible, obviously make them closer to your industries when it makes sense. If you're going to be really trying to get a more of a targeted business audience, that will always help. I'm not saying do that every time. Find people that actually just do funny stuff, interesting stuff. That's great. Follow them as well. But the more you can do that's somewhat peripheral to your business, the traffic that you generate potentially may be more targeted. Okay, what size images are best for Pinterest? And that's actually a great question. I should create a slide for that. But let me do this. Let me see if I can. I'm going to add a whiteboard here. Hopefully you can see this. But basically, if there's a thumbnail size that actually shows up on the main page, and I'll talk about that size in a minute, but when people click on it, they can see what they call the full board side. And the full board size of a photo is somewhere between 550 and say 600 pixels wide, and say just somewhere around 800 pixels in height. That's probably the size that you want it to expand to. You don't want to go much bigger, or if you want to be a full screen, you can certainly go smaller than that, but that's kind of the bigger size that you want to expand to when someone clicks on it. Now, Pinterest will resize things if it's shorter than this, or less wide. Don't worry, you don't have to go like, boy, I got to make everything this size. But this is kind of the general big size that shrinks well, it shows well, and goes from there. So, and what Pinterest does, basically, they shrink it down to a thumbnail size of basically 192 pixels. That's what they'll shrink the width to. So when it's on like the main page, if I go back here to the desktop, my image, there we go. Like if you look at this picture of this right here that I'm hovering over, that width right there, it shrinks it down. So when you click on this, it's going to go much bigger, but that's the width, the 192, that it'll shrink it down to. So that's the 192. So that's the width that they'll shrink to. And then lastly, I'll give a ratio where you want like a height versus width. Basically, and I've got the term I've seen before, and this is crazy, this technical, but 1.618. And that basically means that if you had a picture that was 554 times like 896, that'd be kind of the ratio. And you can shrink it up and down from there as much as you want, but that's a nice ratio because it's a good size when it's thumbnailed. It also then a good size when it's broadened out, and it makes it easier for people to see it on the main screen because it's big enough, and then it expands wide when you open it up. So think of that ratio of the 1.6 meaning height to width, and again, anything below or above that is fine, or not too much above that, but below that is fine. But that is kind of the mark you want to go to. So great question. All right. Okay, there's a term that I didn't even mention in this. It's called conveyance, and someone's asking about if they've heard the term conveyance, and they just wanted to understand what that meant. And basically, what conveyance is, it's called conveyance, like of an image or something like that, is the action. If we think of it as a call to action, like if someone pins it, repins it, likes it, comments on it. Or if they click on it to go to the source of the image itself, that's a conveyance, meaning that there's some action that they've taken with that image itself. And that's a good thing. And the great thing about conveyance is when someone repins or does some sort of call to action, again, as I mentioned, all the description, the URL, and things that you've tied to that image will move forward with the image itself. So if, again, you have something good that begins to go viral, in some respects, all your information that could potentially drive traffic to your website goes along with that. So another great question, something I should probably add to my presentation. Someone's asking about, again, the location, or if you're targeting geographic from a business perspective. The best way to do that is when you search, you can actually search by a city. I'll jump back over here again. Oh, up here. So like if you wanted to type, and you can search on like peoples, their boards and things like that. If I were to type in like Alpharetta, Georgia, and I haven't done this ahead of time, so I'm not sure what's going to show up. But now see how up here it says you can look at pins, boards, or people across top here. This is where you can target some specific people. So if I were to hit people, for instance, these are people that are all around Alpharetta, Georgia. So I can look at maybe some of the things that they're interested in, or they're pinning, or if you're a restaurant, who's big into the foods, or the foodies they call them, and all these different kinds of things. You can begin to follow some of these folks. And of course, if you have compelling information, or you show cool images, or pin good images, or repin, or comment on things, people will begin to follow you. And again, it begins to go viral. And that goes back to the earlier question of how do I add followers. This is a great way to do that. So just do searches. Okay, another question is how many boards can you have? As of right now, it's unlimited. You can have as many boards as you want. So create all the boards that you want. Again, it can be about your product, your services and things, but create other ones. Create interest, like I said, about in me, I put cool technology or favorite places. Those are kind of some of the defaults that come with your accounts you can put on there if you want to. But they're ones that people are interested in. If you show a picture of where you've been or a travel place, those kind of things people share because it's obviously it could be a beautiful picture that you maybe even took yourself at a place you went to, so you can actually comment on it and describe about it. But those are the things that can very easily go viral. One thing you'll notice about Pinterest, you'll see this over in the upper right. People said, someone tried to join but couldn't. Right now, Pinterest is basically by invitation only. And it says invite friends. So if you're not on Pinterest yet and you want to be, shoot me an email and I'll invite you. And therefore you can join. And what Pinterest does, and this is a one-time only thing, so you'll need to have a Facebook or a Twitter account. I guess they did this because they want to make sure that people are connecting, at least originally, and thinking that most people will probably stay connected. But when you first sign up for Pinterest, it'll ask you, click Facebook or Twitter, and it'll ask you to log in and sign in that way. And you can then add a username later on, or it'll ask you in one of the next steps to add a username and password, which typically is an email and that sort of thing. But then you can go back into your profile like I showed earlier, and you can turn off Facebook and Twitter and that thing if you don't want to have all your pins and repins and all your things be showing on Facebook and Twitter. If you don't do a ton of stuff and you're not just killing yourself, I'd encourage you to leave it active. because it's typically things that you're going to be interested in and you might want to share with your audience across the board. If you're going to, like I said, do a lot of almost like in a personal mode, then you may want to turn it off because it's something that you may not want to, bludgeon your users with all the things that you're doing. So that's how you get into Pinterest to begin with. And anybody who's in Pinterest can invite you as well. If you have a friend or a family member or business acquaintance, have them invite you as well. That can be done real easily. Okay, what else we got here? Can you delete a pin? Yes, you can. You can delete a pin, but now what that doesn't do is it doesn't delete a repin. If someone has repinned your item to their page, if you delete yours, it doesn't go out and delete all the repins. So once it begins to go viral, it's the horse is out of the barn, so to speak. It's on its way. So again, if you're going to pin something and potentially if people start repinning it, make sure it's something you're okay that does begin to spread because you can't recall things that are out there. Can you have multiple accounts? Yes, the answer is Pinterest doesn't have a problem with that. You will have to have a separate email for all your accounts because that's typically your login address is your email account. So yes, you can have multiple accounts, and I would encourage you only to do that if you truly have like separate lines of business that are completely different or completely different niches. That's the time when it makes sense to maybe do multiple accounts. If your products or services are all related and they're under kind of one roof, I wouldn't create separate accounts for different product lines. I'd keep them all together, but you can certainly do that if you so chose. I know we're getting close to the time here, so I will maybe just take a couple more here. Okay, this one says, there's a question that says, do you recommend using personal accounts for our business or creating a separate specifically for business use? Kind of back to what I just stated. If you think you're going to have a personal activity, where you want to do your own stuff, like if your own interests, sports, books you read, movies, that sort of thing, create a personal account. Use your personal email and engage that way. Use that maybe for your fun Pinterest activity, and then do one for your business. Use your business email and have a separate account for that. And then that's where you can still have some of the same topics, and I encourage you to because you want to pick things that people are going to be interested in. But at the same time, you want to be able to start slipping in your stuff, your products, your potential services. Again, do it the best engaging way you can, the best images, the best entertainment or enlightening fashion that you can use. But it becomes a little bit more, that account becomes a little bit more about that industry or maybe sort of things around that. Maybe it's books around that. Maybe it's places around that. Maybe it's movies that might be somewhat in line with your business or that sort of thing. So I guess it's perfectly okay to have a personal and a business account. Pinterest doesn't discourage it. They're perfectly fine with it. And I would encourage you to do the same thing when it makes sense. Okay, that we've already answered. We are at the 55-minute mark, and it's actually almost 1 o'clock, so I will go ahead and I guess sign off on this. I much appreciate your attendance. I have put my URL for Zimrock.com over in the chat area, and you can certainly click on that and again go to About Us and Webinars. This replay will be up there probably a little bit later today. Hopefully not too much longer. And then also by tomorrow I'll have the registration for next week's webinar on there as well. I certainly hope this has been a beneficial use of your time. If you go to Zimrock.com, there is also just a contact us area, and feel free to, if you have a question that you didn't get in today or I didn't get to answer, or if you have something else, feel free to shoot me a question or comment over there, and I'll be glad to answer it the best I can from that perspective or from that channel or avenue. So again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it very much, and have a great rest of your day, week, and weekend.